There is a moment, quiet and unremarkable to everyone watching, when a person simply stops. They stop explaining. They stop defending. They stop offering the parts of themselves that were never protected in the first place. Nobody claps when this happens. Nobody notices the exact second it occurs. But from that moment forward, that person is no longer playing the same game as everyone around them. And the people who once controlled them through noise, guilt, and demand suddenly find themselves standing in front of a wall they cannot climb, cannot argue with, and cannot manipulate. This is the beginning of what we are going to walk through together tonight. The slow, cold architecture of a mind that chose silence as its final weapon, and why in every arena of life. From boardrooms to broken relationships, the silent type always wins in the end. Most people are taught that communication is strength. Speak up, defend yourself, explain your side. And for the majority of your life, that advice serves you well enough until you meet the kind of person who does not want dialogue, who wants domination disguised as dialogue. These are the people who ask you questions not because they want answers, but because they want access, a way inside your mind so they can rearrange the furniture without you noticing. The moment you explain yourself to someone like this, you have handed them a blueprint. You have shown them exactly where the load-bearing walls of your identity are, and from that point forward. Every argument they start is really just a controlled demolition. The first shift happens quietly, almost accidentally. You say something honest, vulnerable, unguarded. And instead of being met with care, you are met with a smirk, a twisted retelling. A version of your own words used against you 3 weeks later in an argument that has nothing to do with what you originally said. And something in you, some ancient internal alarm, finally goes off. Not loudly, not with tears, just a flat, cold recognition: I am no longer safe being fully known by this person. That is the exact instant the transformation begins, and it is why you need to say clearly, right now, in the comments below, my openness is not free anymore. What follows this recognition is not withdrawal in the way most people imagine it. It is not sulking, not punishment, not some dramatic exit performed for an audience. It is something far more surgical. You begin to observe rather than react. You begin to notice patterns instead of arguing against isolated incidents. The manipulator, the narcissist, the exhausting personality who thrives on your emotional volatility depends entirely on your participation. They need you to flinch, to justify, to chase their approval, because your reaction is the fuel their entire operation runs on. So when you stop giving that reaction, when your face becomes unreadable and your voice becomes level, regardless of the provocation, you are not being cold. You are cutting off their supply line. This is where most people misunderstand power completely. They think power is loud. They think it looks like winning the argument, having the sharper comeback, delivering the line that makes the room go silent in your favor. But real power, the kind that actually reshapes the balance in a relationship or a workplace or a family, looks almost invisible from the outside. It looks like someone who used to answer every text within a minute, now taking 3 hours, then a day, then simply not confirming plans until the last possible moment. It looks like someone who used to over-explain their whereabouts now offering nothing at all. Not out of secrecy, but out of the quiet understanding that explanations are currency. And currency should not be spent on people who never valued it. And this is the truth you need to plant in the comments right now, so it becomes real for you. I no longer owe anyone access to my reasoning. The people who once held influence over you will notice this shift long before you fully understand it yourself. They will test it. They will escalate. Silence unsettles control freaks more than confrontation ever could. Because confrontation gives them a script to work from, a fight they know how to win. Silence gives them nothing. No foothold, no leverage, no emotional thread to pull. So they will provoke harder. They will accuse you of being cold, distant, punishing them. Ironic language coming from someone who spent years punishing you for having needs. Do not take the bait. The moment you defend your silence, you have broken it. The moment you explain why you stopped explaining, you have handed the weapon right back. There is an old, brutal truth buried inside every successful negotiation, every quiet boardroom takeover. Every historical figure who outlasted louder, flashier rivals, the person who needs the outcome least always holds the power. Desperation broadcasts itself instantly. In the pitch of your voice, the speed of your replies, the way your eyes search another person's face for approval before you have even finished your sentence. Detachment does the opposite. It tells the room, tells the relationship, tells the entire dynamic that you will be fine either way. And there is nothing more disarming to a manipulator than someone who genuinely does not need them to change in order to feel whole. This is why you have to say it into the comments, because saying it makes it structural. My peace does not depend on their permission. As this new discipline settles into your daily behavior, something unexpected starts happening around you. People who used to talk over you begin, cautiously, to wait for your input instead. People who used to test your boundaries with small violations, a canceled plan here, a dismissive comment there, start hesitating because they can no longer predict how you will respond. And unpredictability, wielded calmly, is terrifying to anyone who built their entire strategy on your consistency. You are no longer the reliable emotional vending machine they could insert a provocation into and receive a guaranteed reaction from. You have become something closer to still water, and still water is far harder to read than a storm. This is not about becoming cruel. It is not about revenge fantasies or scorched earth tactics, even though somewhere inside you there is a version of yourself that would enjoy watching them squirm. The real objective is quieter and, honestly, far more satisfying. It is the slow, permanent removal of your emotional dependency on people who never earned the right to hold it. Once that dependency is gone, their behavior stops mattering the way it used to. Their opinions become background noise instead of headline news. Their attempts to provoke you land on a surface that simply does not absorb impact anymore. And this right here is the exact frequency you need to lock in with the comments, "Their opinion of me is no longer my responsibility." Understand something crucial about the people who thrive on chaos and control. They are not actually powerful. They are dependent entirely on the emotional labor of the people around them. Remove that labor, and the entire structure they built collapses in on itself, because it was never self-sustaining to begin with. It was parasitic. It required a host. When you stop hosting, they do not simply find peace elsewhere, they scramble, they escalate, they occasionally implode in ways that are almost sad to witness, if you still had the capacity to feel sorry for them, which, by this stage, you increasingly do not. The final stage of this transformation is the hardest to describe because it does not feel dramatic from the inside. It feels like relief. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for years without realizing it. You stop rehearsing conversations in the shower. You stop drafting text messages you will never send. You stop replaying arguments looking for the perfect rebuttal you should have used. The silence that once felt like a weapon aimed outward has become something else entirely. A fortress built around your own mind. One that nobody gets to enter without your explicit invitation, and very few people, going forward, will ever earn one again. Say it now. Because it belongs to you, I choose who has access to my mind. History remembers the loud names, the generals, the tyrants, the men and women who screamed their way onto the page. But history is quietly shaped, again and again, by the ones who said less than everyone expected, who withheld their next move until the moment it mattered, who understood that information given freely is information weaponized eventually. The sovereign does not announce the war. The sovereign simply, one day, is no longer where the enemy expected them to be. And by the time anyone notices the shift, the outcome has already been decided. There is a particular kind of person who cannot tolerate this shift at all, and it is worth understanding them, not out of sympathy, but out of strategy. They are the ones who built their entire sense of self on being the loudest voice in every room, the final word in every disagreement, the one whose moods dictated the emotional weather for everyone around them. When you stop supplying the reaction they are used to harvesting, something close to panic sets in beneath their composed exterior. They will circle back with sudden warmth, a softness that feels almost convincing, because on some level, they sense the leash slipping. This is not remorse. This is recalibration. They are testing whether the old lever still pulls the old response. Do not mistake their sudden kindness for change. Mistake it for what it is, a diagnostic tool, checking to see if you have actually left the game or simply gone quiet for a round. The discipline required here is unglamorous, and nobody warns you about that part. It is not a single dramatic confrontation where you deliver a devastating line and walk away in slow motion while the credits roll. It is 1,000 small refusals, repeated daily, most of them invisible to anyone but you. It is not answering the message that is clearly designed to provoke a reaction. It is letting a silence sit in a room without rushing to fill it, even when every social instinct you were raised with screams at you to smooth things over. It is watching someone wait for an argument that never comes, and understanding that their confusion is not cruelty on your part, it is simply the natural consequence of no longer being predictable enough to exploit. You will be tempted, more than once, to explain the change, to sit someone down and lay out exactly why you no longer operate the way you used to, as though clarity owed to them will somehow soften the blow or earn you some final scrap of understanding. Resist this urge completely. The people who genuinely deserve an explanation will not need one, because they will have noticed the shift happening gradually and adjusted their own behavior accordingly, without demanding a formal announcement. The people who do demand an explanation, who insist you justify your newfound boundaries, are almost always the same people the boundaries were built to protect you from in the first place. Giving them the explanation is simply handing them a new door into a house you just finished locking. So say it now, plainly, into the comments. Because naming it makes it permanent, I do not have to explain my boundaries to the people who caused them. Something else happens during this period that almost nobody talks about, and it deserves its own attention here. You start to feel a strange, low-grade grief. Not for the person who hurt you, but for the version of yourself who used to hand out unlimited access to their inner world without hesitation, who believed genuinely that honesty would always be met with care. That belief dies somewhere in this process, and its death is not weakness, it is not cynicism, it is simply accuracy replacing naivety. You do not need to mourn it for long. What replaces it is sturdier, less trusting perhaps, but infinitely more discerning, and discernment, once earned, does not disappear. It becomes the new baseline from which every future relationship, every future negotiation, every future conflict is approached. The people who study power seriously, the strategists, the negotiators, the ones who quietly run organizations from positions that look modest on an org chart, all understand one thing intuitively that most people never learn. Information is leverage. And emotion, expressed carelessly, is simply information wearing a thinner disguise. Every time you announce your frustration in the heat of the moment, you are handing over a map of exactly what wounds you, exactly what to press next time they want a particular reaction. The sovereign mind does not eliminate emotion. It simply refuses to broadcast it live. It processes internally, privately, and only releases a response once it has been filtered through strategy rather than impulse. This is not suppression. Suppression corrodes you from the inside. This is regulation, a completely different discipline, one built on delay rather than denial. And that distinction is exactly why you need to plant this next line in the comments. I feel everything, I just no longer perform it for an audience. As this pattern solidifies, you will notice the quality of the people around you beginning to shift, almost without effort on your part. The ones who were only ever attracted to your reactivity, who fed specifically on your explanations, your justifications, your anxious need for resolution, will drift away, uncomfortable in the new quiet. This will initially feel like loss. It is not loss. It is filtration. What remains? The people who can sit comfortably in your stillness without needing to provoke a response out of it are the only relationships actually worth the remaining years of your life. Everyone else was simply borrowing your energy under the disguise of connection. This is the discipline. Not anger, not confrontation, not the satisfying but ultimately hollow victory of the last word in an argument nobody will remember in a year. This is the long game, played by people who understood, earlier than most, that every word you do not owe someone is a piece of leverage you keep for yourself. The world will keep mistaking your stillness for surrender. Let it. The ones who understand what they are actually looking at will already be gone. 3 steps ahead. Calm, unreadable, and completely, finally, free. And when you feel the old pull, the urge to explain, to justify, to chase a resolution that was never going to come from someone incapable of offering one, remember what this entire transformation was actually built on. Not hatred, not revenge, just the quiet, permanent understanding that your silence was never emptiness at all. It was the sound of you. Finally, choosing yourself. Type it into the comments one last time and let it close the loop. The silent type always wins in the end.